And we are now recording, and again, welcome to the new supervisor course, week 3. This one's all we're going to be getting into a lot of performance management. That's the main focus of today. Let me go ahead and hide that music mix. Hope you enjoyed the music for today. Good, got quite a few marks up there. Make sure we get everyone good. Okay, again, like I said, one last time before I actually get started into it. Now that we're recording, since you're my only webinar for this, I want to make sure I mention it to the folks that maybe not exactly here today. Again, if you are still having any Adobe issues, please let me know. Either put a note down in the chat pod or email me. Again, like I said last week, the site is now on the whitelisting, which means that they're pushing for better support from air staff down to your wings out there to get those IT folks supporting Adobe Connect. So if like I said, we got about 1,000 students here in all of our classes that we teach, and so we only had I think, like I said, roughly 40 folks that were still having issues, which is, like I said, one is too many. But when you think 40 out of over around 1,000, that's not a bad percentage. But still, one is too many, especially if you're one of those one. But the idea is if you are still having issues with Adobe Connect, again, make sure you let me know in some way so I can list your base so we can send that up so our report can make it all the way up to air staff, so air staff can go out to those bases that our students are still having trouble with. Whether you're at Tinker, Hill, Ramstein, Edwards, it doesn't matter. Whatever base you're having issues at, to make sure that they get out there and air staff touches base with those IT and comm folks and get the support that you need, all right, so that you can have a positive Adobe Connect experience. Because like I said, if you're getting kicked out of the classroom or you can't get signed in or whatever, there's something happening at the band, at your particular location. So that's why we're trying to, that's why air staff is going out and ask us to do this so they can get with your bases and say, get your act together. All right. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead. Got all these people signed in. Great. There we go. So I'm going to clear everyone's status. Hey, I was really enjoying the gathering activity right there, talking about, how do you describe your role in performance management? And, communication was a common thought that y'all were talking about, going through the thing right here and setting goals, realistic goals. That's right. Expectations and so on. All about the performance management process itself, So, look at this little graphic here on the slide real quick. I found this graphic online. I thought it was kind of funny. I chuckled a little bit at it. I've had the opportunity to take a river cruise through Europe. Well, one of the river cruises through Europe. And we used to see these rowers out there, like going from Paris to Normandy. They're on the Seine river. And they'd be rowing in unison, and it was beautiful to watch these teams row and go so fast down the river. And I know up in the Northeast, some of the Ivy League colleges have rowing, as a part of their sports and everything. But what I really like about this little graphic right here is, let's say, for example, we've got our work center supervisor or possibly one of us who's on the left. We're about ready to start. We've got our megaphone in our hand. We're telling our subordinates, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to row in unison. We're going to go from point A to point B. Ready, set, go. And all of a sudden you tell them to go, and it looks like what's on the right-hand side right there. Right? In other words, you may have communicated to the best of your ability, but apparently the message wasn't getting across or whatever the case is. And sometimes that happens in performance management. So like you all were talking about there, setting clear and realistic goals, communication, expectations, and so on. So hopefully when it comes to your particular work center, your work center runs as smooth as the one that's on the left, and y'all make it all the way down the river from the start to the finish. But I'll lay odds on it every now and then, because we all know that sometimes we go through crisis management or whatever in the work center, those last-minute taskers or whatever the case may be. Sometimes it's like on the right-hand side. We're ready to start, but nope, these are how things really work sometimes. But anyway, just thought I'd put a little graphic up here because, like I said, it kind of plays into our subject for today. Hey, let me share a little bit of information with myself real quick, my little notes. All right, there we go. Got my notes going. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to move forward a slide. We're going to look at our overview, and of course, you'll find the roadmap up there. A little bit. We're going to talk about performance management overview. We're going to get into. Hang on, I have someone private chatting me. Just a moment. Okay. All right. Good, Jane. Performance management. We're going to get into SMART goal setting. We're not going to break into groups today. I'm playing the odds. We'll probably look at one of these on our own and go for it rather than you all break into groups and each group developing a SMART goal. So I'm playing the odds today, all right? Then the third one, we'll get into some feedback and, of course, the SBI model. Then we'll talk about IDPs, individual development plans, especially now that they're mandatory across the Air Force for civilians, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, once we get to it. And I'll also bring in another little thing and talk a little caveat that applies to certain GS series career fields called career field education and training plans. If you are here in the classroom, if you're military, Air Force military, then you probably already know what a CFETP is. But if you're not military, you probably said, Don, what? You said a what? We'll talk about that when we get to it, okay? And lastly, we'll talk about some workforce incentives. In other words, hey, how we can reward our people and put them in for different recognition type things in that. I've got lots of stuff in the file share for you over there. Okay, lots and lots and lots of stuff. Like I said, during the orientation, just like you see in the roadmap up there, which is follow along, you got your objectives. But it's possible that you may have to scroll down in your little pods to see everything I have in there, whether it's the roadmap or whether it's the file share. And remember, if you do scroll down, it doesn't impact anybody but you. Because I can scroll through mine and you don't see me scrolling through it. So same thing as well. All right. Hey, so but anyway, I got lots of stuff to share over there. So just some ideas. I'll just like I said, I'm very CDO, which is OCD, but in the right order. So I actually take my little cursor, I click on the word name, so it puts my stuff in alphabetical order for me. I'll touch on a few of these when I get to the ones that say CFETP. I'll talk about those later. Okay, talk about those later. Don't worry about the ones that say CFETP right now. All right, but later, again, since we're going to be talking a lot performance management net, I have a few handouts over there that deal with performance management, such as if you're in the performance management system called ACDemo. I have a handout over there called ACDemo Site Info and End of Cycle Notice. In other words, for ACDemo and DCIPS, DCIPS. We always just say DCIPS, all right? For those two handouts over there, what I've got is a link to actually their main website, because you can actually get to the ACDemo site and the DCIP site just through the main internet. Just go out there, any internet, and just do a Google search on ACDemo or DCIPs, and boom, here comes the main site up. You don't have to be in an Air Force or government system to get into those two sites, or maybe in certain portions you do, but not the main sites itself. So for ACDemo and DCIPs, I've got the site info and something that I found on each of the sites. Like I said, end of cycle notice on the ACDemo, and for the DCIPs, a little handout called Guide to Key Actions. Right, but all kinds of information out there in the ACDemo and the DCIPs websites. Fantastic information if you're in one of those programs. If you're in DPMAP, then I've got another couple handouts over there for you. One's from Air Force A1, called Air Force A1 DPMAP Supervisor Objectives. As you look down the screen, you'll see the one that says CPS DPMAP Resources. These are some resources that are identified for DPMAP by our civilian personnel folks down at Randolph. I got another handout in there called Feedback Tidbits, some do's and don'ts when it comes to providing feedback. Those aren't from me. These are just some things that that I found and people have shared and put it together on that little handout for you right there. I got another one in there called IDP Example, because IDP is the acronym for Individual Development Plans. So there's an example in there. We're going to look at an example later when we go through the slides as well. Of course, these slides are in here. So if you do have these slides and if you're following along with the slides, more so than what I have on the screen, a little bit later, I'm going to tell you there's going to be not so much of a change, but because the way I have my slides, I'm going to go through one. When you bring up the slide, it'll be all in one. But the way I'm going to show it is I'll get part of it, Then I'll take you to an IDP example slide. Then my next slide is the bottom part of your previous slide. So I'll explain it when I get there. But I've got an IDP example for you in those slides. And the last thing I have in there is called PSDM 19-18 Academic Year 20 CDE, CSLP, and ESCP nominations. You probably know about this already because the Air Force suspense is next Wednesday. All right, so hopefully your air, because we all know that when we have an Air Force suspense, before that there's usually a MAGCOM suspense. Before that there's usually a wing suspense and whatever. But that message there talked about the nominations for civilians, for civilian developmental education, for either, like I said, for either CDE, that is CDE, civilian developmental education. Maybe you want to maybe you're nominating someone or someone's nominating you for, I don't know, a CSLP, maybe Air Command and Staff College, maybe Air War College, whatever it is, some sort of civilian developmental education. Again, the Air Force suspense on that, Air Force wide, is 1 May. So like I said, if you're just now finding out about it from me, you're probably behind the 8 ball, and you might want to get with your training offices as soon as possible. All right, give me a green check mark if you've already heard about the suspense for the Academic Year 20 CDE. You've already heard about it. Give me green check marks. And I hope no one gives me a red X. Because like I said, if you haven't heard about it yet, you're probably, okay, good. Lots of these green check marks coming in. Good. All right. Anyway, I had the message over there for you. So like my next class that I teach starting on the 14th of May, I won't have that message in there because the suspense is already passed. Oh, John, you haven't heard about it. Okay, John. Well, John, if you're curious about nominating your folks for Academic Year 20 CDE, get with your training office, as I'd say today. Because either maybe they've extended the suspense for you all, or maybe you've missed it. But if you did miss it, and if they didn't let you know, John, that's something that I would definitely talk to them about. How come you didn't tell us about it? Whatever the case is. All right. Anyway, so lots of stuff in the file share for you now. Hey, let's get on with this. Let's go back up to our roadmap. Let's finish up with our objectives so we can get going. So in this area of week 3. Performance management. It says, understand the importance of performance management and supervisor responsibility in goal setting, feedback, development, and workforce incentives. Basically, a lot of stuff we're going to touch on today, as a matter of fact. Right? So any questions before I get started? I don't see anything. All right, let's get going then. Let's talk a little bit about performance management. Okay, so I'm going to end up asking you quite a few questions today, right? Remember, this is a participative course. So let me ask you this. If we were going to define performance management, how would you define performance management? Let me put this down in the chat pod, and you type it in the chat pod for me, if you will. How would you define performance management if you're going to define it for us? Right? You don't have to give me a dictionary answer. No. Or not the official Air Force or DOD answer. Just you personally. How do you define performance management? Right, what you got to say about that? All right, got a lot of people typing. Great, I love it when a lot of people type. Right? All right, so making sure performance matches. Oh, good. Yeah, we want to make sure it matches. If they're not matching, sometimes we can be spinning our wheels, and as we go through the system, we'll find out that it can be less demotivating, actually, if for some reason our requirements and expectations don't match. Making sure everything matches our organizational goals, good, executed, tracking performance and expectations, rating people, encouraging best performance, good, okay? You notice how some of these things that you're typing in now almost mirror what you were typing in earlier when I said, when the gathering activity, how do you see your role in performance management? And so there is a purpose in my question right now because it actually becomes a full cycle, basically. Good. All right, good. All right, so let's look at this little slide right here. And if my mouse would slow down, it's a little antsy today. There we go. So performance management, this, of course, is the official type of definition As we go through, you'll find this in the. This is the answer that's actually in Title V, of the United States Code. But I'm not going to read this whole thing right to you. But basically, it's actually what you were talking about right there. We got a group of individuals that are trying to come together as a team to try and enhance our mission effectiveness so that we can meet our goals and that mission and so on. That's about it. Now, these guys that are on the screen right here, these were a bunch of individual football players. Now, you may say, Don, that's soccer. Remember, I'm living in Europe, and in Europe, soccer is called football. So they call our football American football. All right? If you've been in Europe, you already went through that already. But so all these soccer football players are individuals, and they're on their teams. They could be in Major League Soccer. They could be in the Premier League in England. Maybe the Bundes, or however you pronounce it here in Germany. Maybe they're in Italy, Spain. All around the world, they've got a whole slew of soccer football leagues in that. But of course, every 4 years they get together for what's called the World Cup, where you have all these individuals come together, and sometimes teams play really good when you have all these individuals come together, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes it can be the manager as well. I mean, the USA this past World Cup didn't make the tournament, unfortunately, but we got our fingers crossed for the next time. Right? I was actually rooting for Germany or England, and neither of those won it. But France, they did. They came together and played well, and they won the World Cup. A great performance management in their part in that. So, like I said, if I look at just take this in a very short little sentence, you could basically say that performance management basically just translates to organizational goals into results, and hopefully very good results as well. All right. So we talk about performance management. Let me ask you this real quick. I'm going to bring over a slide. I mean, not the slide. My first Pol Pot. We got 4 of these for you today. All right. So my first Pol Pot asks you, what performance management system do you personally happen to fall under? Right? Are you in DPMAP? Are you in DSIPS? Are you in ACDEMO? Or are you in something else? If you are in something else, please type it in the chat pod. Or this doesn't apply to me because I'm military. Right? So what we got right here? So we got so far about neck and neck. So we've got about 12 people, 14 people that are in DPMAP, all right? And the rest of y'all are in ACDEMO, okay? So that means that for those of y'all who are here in the classroom today, if you wanted to download stuff from the file share, you can skip right over that DSIP stuff because I don't have anyone here in the classroom today that's in DSIPs, all right? But I do have, like I said, I do have some handouts over there that cover ACDEMO and DPMAP. Good. Oh, there we got one person that's in DSIPs. Just popped in. As we used to say, I grew up in the Cincinnati area, northern Kentucky. We used to play a card game called euchre. Right? Whenever that's you, Gene. Okay. Whenever we play euchre, and someone would come in, we'd say, "Oh, another county heard from." So Gene was our other county there. All right, Gene. So he's our DSIPs person. All right, good. All right, go ahead and close that Pol Pot. All right. So again, you had a lot of information in your reading. There's a lot of information in the discussion board area as well, where your fellow students have been making comments in week 3, talking about their performance management system, some examples that they've run into. Some are actually have typed into the discussion board area, some way arounds and best practices and so on. So if you haven't had the opportunity to go out and look at the week 3 discussion board, in Canvas, go check that out. Because like I said, a lot of your fellow students have been making comments about the performance management system. So, and if you have information, if you have someone out there that you see that they've got an issue or they've got a question and you can answer that, feel free to answer it back. They'll really, really appreciate that. Remember, it's not mandatory to participate in the discussion board, but what a great way to share information, right? So just to highlight real quick, because like I said, you have a lot of information in your reading about it. We're just going through the basics here. So you got your DPMAP, had a lot of people in DPMAP. That was our majority. And we just ended that eval period on 31 March, and I'll bet y'all that are in DPMAP went, yay! Glad that one was over with. And now you get to, so you can't really lay back on it and everything, because pretty soon you'll be into the feedback sessions again and everything. But DPMAP, Defense Performance Management and Appraisal System, and of course its eval period is 1 April to 31 March. And here, of course, we've got those performance elements. We have our standards. How did the people perform based upon their elements and standards, so we can know how to rate the individual and so on, right? So, like I said, some good information over there. You probably got all kinds of information down from your civilian personnel office about, as you're getting towards the end of the cycle. And also, especially if you're looking to put people in for monetary awards or maybe time off awards, or whatever the case is. We'll talk about awards later in here. But again, if you got questions on that, make sure you talk to your subject matter experts, your civilian personnel office, because they got certain processes you want you to do, like step A before step B. Sometimes if you do step B before step A, it messes up the whole system. And sometimes if you try to do A and B at the same time, it won't take, and whatever it is. So again, no matter what system you're in, your subject matter experts out there are your civilian personnel offices, and that's why we got them out there. And those staffing specialists, like we talked about in that first week when we talked about hiring and so on, right? So that's DPMAP. DCIPS, of course, Defense Civilian Personnel Civilian Intelligence Personnel System. Now, when it comes to DCIPS, these are a lot of individuals, such as programmers, strategy research analysts, and whatever Gene is. I don't know what Gene does, but he's our only DCIPS person. But this eval period is basically on and Gene's going to type in, tell us what he does. DCIPS is basically a fiscal year basis. So we got that 1 October to 30 September. So those of you all, like Gene, who's in DCIPS, you classified intel support. Oh, good, intel. I love intel. All right. But the idea is we're probably about mid-year for DCIPS. So they're probably going about to their mid-year feedback sessions about now, or maybe they just finished, or maybe they're getting ready to, whatever it is. But and intel. I got to be the command chief at Goodfellow, and so all those intel folks down there. Love it, love it. All right, got ACT Demo. We got the rest of the class had about half DPMAP and half ACT Demo. So we got these are the folks that are Civilian Acquisition Workforce Personnel Demonstration Project. Boy, that's a mouthful, isn't it? This is a lot of contribution based, just like DCIPS is contribution based a little bit as well, right? This also works on a fiscal year basis. So those of you all, the rest of you all that are in ACT Demo, you're probably getting ready to do your midterm feedbacks, just like, or whatever you call it, just like they do in the DCIPS world as well. Hey, do me a favor, give me a green check mark. All right, let's do this right here. Let me put this question in the chat pod, real chat pod. Never mind. Give me a green check mark if you are in a different performance management system than those you supervise. Give me a green check mark if you're in something different than those you supervise. When we're talking civilians, not military. If you supervise military, we know it's different. They got EPRs and OPRs. But if you supervise Air Force civilians, right, they're in a different type of system that's different. So we got a few, and that could be kind of unique, okay, when you have that happen. And okay, let me go ahead and close that out. Let me ask you another question this way. All right? How many of you all, give me a green check mark, you don't have to worry about the red. Give me a green check mark if you supervise individuals that are in different systems. In other words, Johnny's in this system, Mary's in that system, Billy's in that system. You supervise individuals that are in different systems. Not just one individual, but multiple individuals. And then you have different systems you have to worry about. Oh, so here we got 4 or 5 folks right there. And that could be really a hassle, because we can have some people that supervise people in DPMAP, or also supervise someone that's in ACT Demo, which means no matter what, you're always doing something as a supervisor. I mean, you may be doing your midterm feedbacks on these individuals, but you're doing your end of year reporting on these individuals over here. So it really, really can keep you busy sometimes. All right. But like I said, if you have questions whatsoever when it comes to the type of performance management system, yours or those you supervise. Remember, your subject matter expert is that civilian personnel office out there, right? Hey, of course, we've got our steps involved in performance management and so on. Planning, monitoring, developing, grading, rewarding. You see up there on the screen. And you notice by the graphic that the circle doesn't seem to end. That's because the system, it never ends. Seems like we're always planning something, or we're hoping to be planning something, because we want to make sure that, things, if we don't plan it, it may not happen, or if it does happen, it may be not how we wanted it to happen. So normally we're planning something. We're always monitoring our people, whether we're monitoring formally or informally, through either documentation or just word of mouth. Hey, this, I saw you do this, whatever the case is. We're always, developing our folks. Hey, talk about developing. Remember the thing in the file share, CDE, civilian developmental education. So we're all, normally we're doing some sort of development, whether it's through, professional military, let me rephrase that. Whether it's through, civilian developmental education, or whether it's just through on-the-job training, maybe some TDYs to learn a new piece of equipment or a new process, whatever. There's some sort of developing, happening at all times, right? Because rarely, even if an individual doesn't have any mind to promote or whatever, if something's changed, we have to learn this new stuff. So we're developing. Rating, of course, we do that once a year officially. That's where we get into the rating process. And rewarding, hopefully we're rewarding quite often. We got our quarterly awards, we got our annual awards, and we'll talk about rewarding when we get to later in the slides and that. All right. So we're talking about planning. I like this little graphic right here. Of course, these are a whole bunch of European traffic signs. Right. You may say, wait a minute, Don, there's a stop sign in there. Yes, even here in Germany, where the word for stop is halt, right? They have stop signs. That is a worldwide sign, it seems like, at least for Europe and the United States. But these are a whole bunch of traffic signals and everything. My favorite one on the slide is the one that's in the very middle, where it's blue. It's got the two white lines, and then the overpass. That means it's an Autobahn. If you've ever been to Germany, normally that means no speed limit. And I kind of like that, all right? But what I like about this is, remember the days before we had GPS? I mean, now we just get in our car, we plop in either the coordinates or we plop in the address. Here in Germany, we have to put in the city code, and then we put in the name of the street and then the number. And it tells us where we're going. We just can't put in the city, because there may be multiple cities in this country, and if you just put in the city, you could end up on that side of Germany when you really want to be on that side of Germany. But remember, before we had GPS, what did we use to try and go from point A to point B? I know what I used. What'd you use? What'd you use before we had GPS in planning trips? Let's pick on planning trips for a moment here. You used Mapsco. Okay, I haven't heard of that one. Right? What else? That's Matthews. What else y'all use? MapQuest. Okay. Right? A map, a paper map. Right. I remember going to Walmart or Kmart and buying that great big atlas. It's about that big. Yeah, Jason just typed in the road atlas, right? Type that great big map where you got all these pages, and you put it in the back seat of your car, and as you're driving down the road, you tell your other half, who's your navigator, okay, I think I'm lost. Pull out the map, and then they're going through the pages. Okay, we're on page 5. Now we got to go to page 52, whatever the case is in that. Yeah, old school maps and that. But hopefully, whether you're going on a trip or whether you're talking about some sort of training program or even here, performance management, we actually plan our route so that we know where we're going to go. If we get any speed bumps in the road or we have to take a detour, we at least have an idea where this detour may take us to. I also like to talk about this other example here. I remember when we were moving from Scott Air Force Base to McCord in 2000. And we were, and the boys had never been, think of 2000, we didn't have GPS yet, right? So the boys really wanted to go to Mount Rushmore. I had never seen Mount Rushmore either, so I was really interested in it. So my wife, who's a very much of a planner, she gets out the book and she figures, okay, we'll drive from here to here, we'll spend the night, and they'll drive from here to here, spend the night, and so on. So she's contacting these hotels to make reservations for us, right? So finally, we get to, she's on the map, she gets us to Rapid City, And I say, hey, Ellsworth Air Force Base is there. So I contact Ellsworth, and they say, nope, sorry, Chief, we have no billeting and so on. I can't even get you to protocol and get you a Chief suite or anything. We have no billeting whatsoever. Sorry, Chief. And so, we're checking around at all these hotels in Rapid City and so on, and there's nothing. Everything is full. I think it's like late July. Finally, one of the individuals that works at a hotel says to my wife, ma'am, do you really need to travel to this area here in Rapid City area, this part of July? There's this great big thing that happens every year in July, and everything is booked. Anyone happen to know what that little thing is called that happens every year in that part of the world? No one's typing in. I got Scott typing in. Let's see if Scott knows. There you go. I'm sorry, it was Ken. Yeah, Sturgis, the biggest motorcycle rally in the world, and nothing. We actually found a place about 30 miles off the interstate, a place called the President's. There's a bunch of little cabin, but 30 miles, just think if we had not planned and just went there and showed up, either the boys would have been disappointed because we would have just kept on going, or we would have had to sleep in our cars or something. So, but yeah, Sturgis. So again, planning the routes, and that's just one little example. I'm sure that you have got plenty of examples that you could use to talk to your folks about when it comes to the planning processes and that. All right. So again, planning, make sure that we can get from point A to point B. All right. So talking about SMART goal setting, this is actually a major portion of our planning. Just like you were talking about, if I back up in the chat pod, we're talking about, like John typed in, meeting organizational vision and goals. And let's see, who else typed in goals in that? Expectations and goals and whatever. Rebecca typed in match organizational goals, whatever the case is. So this is a popular item, goal setting. And this is a major portion of DPMAP, and I hear it's making it into the other performance management systems as well. So this is where we normally, when we talk about SMART goal setting, it's actually an acronym. So you got your SMART. Your S is specific. In other words, when we're trying to create these goals, we want to be as specific as possible because we're trying to get rid of any misconception, any perceptions, whatever, so that when we communicate what that goal is, there's no misinterpretation of it or miscommunication, whatever. So the goal is clearly identified. What do you want? Right? Measurable. Right? Of course, we have to make sure we're meeting the goal. So how are we going to measure this? Are we going to use metrics? Are we going to use just some sort of graphs, charts? Whatever it is. How are we going to measure to make sure that we're reaching our goal? And if it's a very long goal, maybe we got sub goals. Okay, we reach this one, good. Now we reach that one, good. Eventually, we're going to get to where we're going. So we have to be able to measure: are we getting where we need to go? If you're not measuring it, how are you going to know? Right? Achievable. Another popular word for the A is attainable as well. In other words, you want your goal to be challenging, but you don't want to set your goal so high that they'll never reach it. Of course, you don't want to set it too low that it becomes like, why are we doing this? This is simple, right? So the idea is, if your goal is never achievable, never attainable, they're going to say, we are just spinning our wheels. Why are we even doing this? So, of course, we wanted to make sure that it's achievable or attainable, right? Is it relevant? That's the R. In other words, does it make sense? Especially the best way to create SMART goals is related to the job, so that people can see value and benefit in actually trying to reach that goal because it has a purpose, right? It's just not a goal just to have a goal, right? That's like, remember we used to have all those how-to guides that we have, we do this how-to guide, put it on the shelf, and it just stays there, right? Didn't do a whole lot of good, right? But we want something that, that we can use. Is it relevant? Once we reach that goal, do we see a purpose, whatever it is, right? How does it impact them? And lastly, time bound. Right? How long is that goal? Will it be like a 3-month goal? Is it a 6-month goal? A year? 2 years? If it is very long down the line, as I mentioned earlier, are we going to create those sub goals to be able to find out, once we reach this and we can go to that and whatever it is? So there, of course, you got, like I said, your acronym. Specific, measurable, achievable, or attainable, relevant, and time-bound. SMART, right? SMART. Now, you may say, oh, Don, we're about SMART goaled out. But like I said, it is a major portion of the planning process in these performance management systems. So whether you like it or not, it's there, and it's things that we as supervisors have to do, right? Now, normally, some people look at a SMART goal and start creating a novel. And when you think about looking at like the little 5 things here, you got your SMART in the circle. Look at the objective. Now, this here is a typical supervisor task that a supervisor has to do. And so advise employees of performance expectations. Hey, that's some of the things y'all were typing in the chat pod. So if you are going to create a SMART goal to make sure that, for you or maybe for a fellow supervisor to give them that goal of meeting that requirement of advising employees of performance expectations, look at the little words here on the screen. There are only 13 words here, right? Meet with each employee. That's very specific and that's very measurable, right? Quarterly, there's your time. During fiscal year 18 or whatever it is, right? Again, that's a time. To review a position description and core documents, that's very specific, that's very attainable or achievable, and it's also relevant to the person's job, right? So here we have a SMART goal that, like I said, is 13 words long. Now, it's human nature to start figuring out, okay, I got to meet this goal. I got to create a goal of how I'm going to advise employees of performance expectations. Okay, I'm going to do this. Listen, all these things that you think that you need to do to reach that objective. Well, actually, what you're identifying there is you're actually brainstorming yourself into identifying all the subtasks that you need to do to reach the goal that you're actually trying to create. So the idea is, like I said, when some people try to write a SMART goal, it's 10, 15 words long at the most. If you start creating a goal that gets into 25, 30, 40 words, like I said, you're creating and identifying all the subtasks. Just like when we teach these lessons right here. We have one succinct statement that says, hey, this is what we're required to teach during week 3. These things, right? Now, all these things that we're teaching, how we're teaching, and whatever the case is, those are all the subtasks that we're doing. And that's how SMART goals work as well. So, if we were to break you into groups and have you create a goal, a SMART goal, based on a certain supervisory requirement or objective, hopefully you would come up with something that's, as a group, it would only be like I said, 10, 15 words long. You brainstorm maybe a whole bunch of little things. But the idea is taking all those whole bunch of little things and becoming to a very concise statement. And that's all a SMART goal is. All right? So like I said, what we normally do right now is actually we break you into groups, but we're not going to do that. All right? Like I said, I'm playing the odds. And I got people on the phone as well. All right? But as you see right here, it says your objective for this little exercise, this group activity, would have been exercises supervisory personnel management responsibilities. And we identified 5 things the supervisor is required to do. And so we would have broke you into 5 groups. It'd be roughly, looks like 5 to 6 people in each group, right? And each of the groups would have brainstorm one of those 5 items. They would only had about 10 minutes where they would have, brainstorm and put into the little chat pods, of the things that they would actually try to identify to create that goal. Then the group leader would actually take all that stuff that they're actually brainstorming and just create one very succinct SMART goal, right? Like I said, 10, 15 words long. And that's how a SMART goal works. Hang on, someone private chatted me. All right, gotcha, William. All right, so the idea is what we're going to do is we're actually going to do this together. So I'm going to change the slides up for a minute here. Bear with me. All right, so things are going to move around for a little bit. So when you see the slide that says, because I don't even see it yet, SMART goal group exercise, and you see group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on there, give me laughter. Give me a smile. Give me a smiley face if you see SMART goal group exercise slide, and then under focus areas, it says group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. All right, good. All right, so as you see, whoever would have been in group 1, you all would have been developing a SMART goal and how to ensure you as the supervisor ensure EO compliance. Right? Group 2 would be identifying how the supervisor will provide employee recognition, different things that they may do or whatever. Group 3 would have been looking at how the supervisor ensures compliance with safety and security standards. Group 4 would have been looking at how the supervisor will provide performance feedback. Right? And Group 5 would have been looking at how the supervisor is coordinating work assignments and schedules. Okay. Well, let's do this as a whole, and let's take Group 2s. Right? Providing employee recognition. So what I'd like you to do is we're going to look at these succinctly. We got our SMART. So what we'll do is, as you see over here on the far right-hand side at the bottom, this was the area that once the group would have brainstormed, then their group leader would have wrote into the group leader's own little chat pod the little SMART goal the group would have come up with, and that's where that group leader would have done that. All right, and then we'd all get to see it. But we're going to do it, like I said, we're doing a little bit different today because I'm playing the Adobe Connect odds and averages and everything. So let's just do Group 2, providing employee recognition. So everyone on that list over there under participants is Group 2 today. All right. So let's talk about the SMART specific. So let's think. Now remember, these are things for the supervisor to do, right? Because it's a supervisor personnel management responsibility, right? So let's just talk about the S, the specific. What are some of the things that you as the supervisor might do as a specific requirement to make sure you provide employee recognition for your people? Type that in the chat pod for me. What are some of the things that you as the supervisor would do with the S, specific, to provide employee recognition? So what y'all got? What y'all coming up with there? You do public praise, okay? Understand resources, okay? Right? So remember, this is what we're doing. We are brainstorming right now. We are brainstorming. You'd create a wall of fame for achievements. Okay, Anissa. Jason would praise in public. Michael says we do on-the-spot awards. Kelly says we tell them a great job. Okay, the praise them, right? Bring them food. Oh, I want to work for Landa. I want some food, right? Praise in public. Let employee know a job well done. NAA, right? Kent, why don't you type that in? TOA, of course, is time off awards. NAA, it's not ringing a bell on me right here. Kent. Let's see. Donuts, Gene says, especially if they're Krispy Kreme, right? Oh, that's right. Notable Achievement Awards. Gotcha. Okay. Talk about accomplishments in staff meeting. Okay, good. Right. So we got that. That's a continuing. Got a few more people typing in. So again, these are specific when it comes to. You talked about the 59-minute early dismissal. We talked about the 59-minute flexibility last week, didn't we? Gene says time off. Any available awards? Okay. Praise around their peers, wingman activity, and so on. Okay, good. So here's where we're brainstorming, as a group, trying to figure out, okay, what are the specific things that we can do as a supervisor to make, and when it comes to employee recognition. Okay, let's talk about the measurement. Now remember, this is about you. What type of measurement system would you put into process to measure yourself or your fellow supervisors or whatever, to make sure that we are meeting this goal? So what would you put it? Remember, you're not measuring your people on this; you're measuring yourself. Right? So what type of measurement system would you use to make sure that you're actually going to meet this particular goal? Right? What type of system would you use? There's no wrong answer on this because this is all brainstorming, right? So, all right. So Gene's typing in. What you got there, Gene? What type of system would you use? I got Lana typing in too. Okay, you do some sort of quarterly measurement, okay? Right. So a quarterly awards package might be it might be the specific, but your measurement would be making sure you do these things quarterly, okay? Right. So, but would you use a metric system? Would you use some sort of suspense system. What's something you might use? A post-goal metrics, okay. But remember, you're trying to make sure you're measuring yourself to make sure you actually meet this goal. Oh, good. Outlook reminders might be good, especially if you know the suspense is ahead of time, right? Right. Jira, Jira. I've never heard of Jira for task completion analysis. That might be something in your neck of the woods. I've never heard of that one, Anisa. Jira. That I have to check into see what that is. Right? Okay. So in other words, whatever system that you set up to make sure that you're actually reaching your goals, your goal of making sure that you recognize your folks. All right. Let's talk about attaining achievable. Now, of course, it's all upon us to make sure that's attainable or achievable. The biggest thing when it comes to attaining achievable for us is one, doing the awards packages, all right? Recognize, but also as long as we know what the suspenses are, so that we can attain, reach them in time. So I won't go so much into the A, all right? Because that's all relevant based on whether it's a quarterly award, an annual award, or what type of award. We'll talk about some of these a little bit later. Let's move on into the next one. Look at R, relevant. Okay, what are some types of awards that we would be concerned about as supervisors that would be relevant for our people? What are some of the relevant awards? Because you don't want to put our person in for like the basket weaver of the month because, unless they're into crafting, that's really not, it doesn't seem relevant to what they do, right? So what are some of the things? Oh, James mentioned safety. Oh, could be a safety award. They were safety, they stayed safe on the job and that. Then again, it could be safety. He could have been mentioned a career field award. Maybe the person is in safety and it's a career field package he's putting them in for. Chad and Jason just mentioned quarterly awards, and Chad also mentioned annual awards. Okay, all right. So we've got safety, we've got quarterly, we got annual. I just mentioned career field. I remember we had a civilian personnel manager of the year when I was in the personnel world. We may have civilian Cat 1, civilian Cat 2, honorary awards, whatever, certificates of appreciation, good, okay. STEM awards, good. We could have maybe if there even additional duty awards possibly. Maybe if the individual is an additional duty training manager, maybe we could put them in for that particular award there at the wing. Maybe if they're in maintenance, even civilian, things called like knuckle buster awards or whatever. All kinds of awards out there that we'll talk about awards when we get into. That's why I'm picking on this, because I got some new stuff to pass on to you about awards as well later when we get into the a later slide too. On the spot awards, good. Okay, so there's all kinds of awards, and yes, as long as we make sure they're relevant, right? Last one is time bound. Now y'all were just typing in stuff. Time bound. Again, it plays right back into the achievable, attainable. As long as we know our suspenses, and we know whether it's a quarterly award, an annual award, whatever it is. So the idea is okay, we've done this brainstorming. Now, basically, what we would do for us, or if let's say, for example, we are the supervisor of a supervisor, right? And so we're creating this goal, this SMART goal for Mary. I don't have any Mary in the class today. Good. For Mary, who is a supervisor, to make sure, okay, Mary, you supervise those 10 people over there, right? Well, one of your jobs, Mary, is to make sure that you provide employee recognition for your subordinates. So, Mary, I've created this SMART goal for you because, this is part of your DP map or your DSIPs or your ACT demo or whatever it is. It's part of your requirements when I do your performance management. So I want to make sure that, you actually reach this particular goal. So that's what these SMART goals are all about, right? So all these jobs that we do as supervisors, right? Granted, there may be some that seem very simple. Why do we create a SMART goal? It all depends on what your performance management requirements are as to what you're required to create SMART goals on or not. So again, you can talk to your subject matter experts and so on. So if you don't have any experience when it comes to SMART goal setting, talk to someone who does. Reach out, talk to your peers, talk to the mentors, the advisors you may have had from other people you've worked with or dealt with before, but someone who can help you when it comes to actually SMART goal setting, right? All right, any questions? I'm not going to go through the other four groups or anything like that we have up there. I just wanted to give you an example of that particular one right there. Any questions on that? No questions. All right, let's go back to the main classroom. Go back to the main classroom here. All right, so anyway, so here we got, and waiting for my slide to come back up. So when the slide comes back up and you see the slide that says smarter, give me a smiley face again. All right, let's do the smiley face again. When you see the smarter slide, give me a smiley face again. Good. All right, good. There we go. Now, I found this slide online when I was doing my research for the course and everything. And of course, we got our SMART, S-M-A-R-T, but the E-R adds on, because we can evaluate our people, keep evaluating the goals, whatever it is. And also, possibly, we can put some rewards on these goals as well. So you can easily turn a SMART goal into a smarter goal as well. All right. So when it comes to that, let's talk about monitoring for a little bit. All right, let's talk about monitoring. Now, of course, monitoring is nothing more than just keeping an eye on your people, and this is continuous. This rarely ends. Whether we're doing it formally, whether we're doing it informally, whatever it is, this is ongoing. Just looking over their shoulder, observations, interactions. Some people use customer feedback. Maybe you're in a customer service organization and you got those things called ICE, those interactive customer evaluation, I think it's called, whatever ICE stands for. But I've been in a customer service organization. We use that. Maybe you use feedback. I had someone email me just the last day or so talking about they're developing a feedback system that I have any, how do we pass on feedback, whatever the case is. There's all kinds of systems out there when it comes to, monitoring your people. So the idea is we want to make sure we keep our eye on people. Besides, if we're continually monitoring, it'll make it so much easier on us when it comes to the evaluation time in that. So I'm going to put a question down in the chat pod for you. If you put your answer in the chat pod, please. All right. What happens if a supervisor is not consistently monitoring performance? So you got some examples or whatever. So, if we're not monitoring our people, or seeing how they're doing, what could happen? And Rebecca says morale could go down. Exactly correct. Yeah. And what else we got? What else we got? All right. People will think the supervisor really doesn't care or is not engaged. Good. Lack of motivation. Performance drops. Perfect. All right. Yeah. Great. Right? Great examples right there. Yeah, because a lot of people want to know, hey, boss, how am I doing? I remember when I became a GS employee the first time. Of course, it was an education and training center, and I used to run education and training centers when I was on active duty. But the idea is hey, I was new as a civilian though, so I turned to my boss, Doctor, whatever his last name was, and I said, hey, I'm curious, can you, what do you think about, are you monitoring? How are things going? He says, Chief, you're doing fine. And I said, well, but I'm doing this as a civilian now. I would really like to know what you're seeing, whatever the case is, because I want to make sure that I'm doing okay. So when it comes to my official feedback or whatever, that we'll be in lockstep and know what we're actually talking about and everything. So yeah, we want to give that monitor to our folks and see and so on. Okay, another question down in the chat pod for you about that. So my question is this, folks. So when it comes to in terms of documentation, because you're probably documenting some of the things that you're monitoring, whether you're documenting officially or unofficially, you're probably doing some documenting, so it'll help you down the road. In terms of documentations, what types of documentation are you using to monitor their performance? I remember we're not talking about doing the actual performance report now. We're talking about we're monitoring, we're observing, whatever. You're making notes. What types of documentation are you using to set aside to possibly use later when it comes to your actual doing your appraisal time frame? So what are some of the things that you're using? Sheila says she has a book with employee numbers, annotate performances in her book. Oh, John's using training records. Okay. All right. What else y'all are using? And the reason I have y'all type this in is because it gives other people in the classroom ideas that they may start piggybacking on, right? Called benchmarking, Michael's using SharePoint. Nate's using a running notepad. Oh, I hope it doesn't run too fast on you, right? Catch it if you can there, Nate. No, I'm kidding, right? Gene emailed himself, keeps it in a protected folder, okay. Rebecca's keeps an eye on her time off award balance. Kent uses some sort of project tracking tool. Kelly says our own records, and Jason's using a work journal, okay. Nisa's using tracking tool. Oh, that's what Jira is. Okay, I never heard of it. I have to write that down. Jira. I'm gonna look that one up. Okay? SharePoint status report. Hours run on widgets. Okay, good. Okay, got Chad typing in too. I'll wait for Chad to type in. See what he's got right there. And Daniel. All right, we'll press on. All right. So the idea is whatever system you use, because let's face it, our minds are not perfect, and I know sometimes. My wife teases me. She says I got Halfheimers, but I really don't. But the idea is sometimes there's so much stuff running up there that if I don't write something down, I may forget it, next week or whatever. So if I don't, if I see something that's going, I've always done this. Even back in my active duty days, I always kept some sort of notes. So when it came time for me to do that civilian performance appraisal or write that enlisted performance report or whatever, I had my notes set aside and so that I would be able to pull that information right up. I'd also get information from my folks as well. But I'd have my own too. All right. So when it comes to the next area right here, talking about feedback. Now in feedback itself, basically when we're talking about feedback, again, this can be formal or informal. And not, if you supervise Air Force officers and Air Force enlisted, there are official feedback forms you have to use. That's what's called the Airman Comprehensive Assessment. We don't talk about that in here. That's the other course that I teach. But the idea is if you supervise Air Force military, you're used to some sort of official feedback forms to use when it comes to providing official feedback or whatever. But, it's possible that you may not have any official feedback forms out there because there's no actually, what are we going to call? I forget the word where everything is exactly the same. Right? You're probably typing the word again. That's probably that Halfheimer is kitchen in. But the idea is you've got all kinds of examples out there. This is where you can also get with your civilian personnel office, see if they have some examples. Maybe you're being dictated to by your installation, by your MAGCOM, by your group, by your squadron, whatever it is, to use certain forms when it comes to feedback or whatever it is. All right. When it comes to feedback, though, real quick right here, you see those little graphics on the screen. Normally it's two-way. Yes, sometimes it's one-way, but normally it's two-way. Formal, informal. Again, that's that monitoring we were talking about earlier. But giving them informal feedback is just talking to them. Hey, I see you do this. Maybe you could do it this way, whatever it is. Formal is where we're actually writing it down officially and maybe giving them a copy of the feedback, whatever it is. What I said, it's different on the military side than on the civilian side. So when it comes to formal written feedback, we're not talking about the performance report. That's rating. Here we're talking feedback. So that way, if we do really good formal feedback, by the time it comes to the rating time frame, there should be no surprises. All right. So again, you can talk to your folks and find out, hey, are there any certain ways that we are required to do formal feedback, documenting time frames and so on. All right. So when it comes to feedback, let me ask you this. All right. Put a question down in the chat pod for you. Let me block and copy this. All right. And so put your answer in the chat pod for me. And there's no wrong answer to this because I'm using the term, what do you believe? So what do you believe as individuals? What's the purpose of even giving feedback? Right? Why do we do that in the first place? Right? So what do you think about that? What's the purpose of providing feedback? Good, Kent. Yeah, to help others, provide direction, help them grow. Great. Okay. Yeah, because if we're going to do the rating later down the line, if they're making some mistakes here, let's get them corrected before it becomes the rating time frame as well. Making sure both are on the same page. Good. So they know how they're doing, help them progress, personal growth, find out how you feel about your section. Okay, good. Make sure you and your boss are aligned. That's a good point. You may have heard working two desks, two desks ahead. General Lorenz, who used to be the Air University commander, and then he became the AETC commander before he retired. General Stephen Lorenz used to have this saying as working my boss's issues. So if I'm working my boss's issues, okay, but I'm working my boss's issues, that's going to keep my boss even happier because my boss won't have anything to worry about. Yeah, exactly correct. Good examples right there. All right, so let me ask you this. All right, let me ask you this. Bring over another Pol Pot for you here, talking about feedback. All right. So here's a second Pol Pot for you. So I want you to think about you personally. This is you as a subordinate, not a supervisor. You as a subordinate. Your supervisor provides you feedback. Too much, not enough, or just the right amount. You and your supervisor, how much feedback do you get? Right? Too much, not enough, just right enough. So we've got one person saying too much. Probably works for a micromanager, I'm guessing. Okay. Not enough, 8, and just the right amount, 13. Okay. Now the reason I ask you this question is to get you to think as a subordinate. In other words, someone who's being rated on, rather than being the rater. Right. So that if we were to ask your subordinates, the people you supervise, the same question, we're not. But if we were, maybe in a future class, how would they answer when it pertains to you? Now, don't answer that question. To me, that's rhetorical. So, just think about that for a moment. You answered it how you view your supervisor. Now, put the shoe on the other foot. How would your people view you? Don't answer that, right? So, does Don give me too much, not enough, or just right about? Right? Makes you think about that for a moment. So, again, that's why we put that question in there to get you thinking on the other way around, basically. Super amazing. Probably not, John. Probably not. Right? So when it comes to this, the SBI thing right here, we got situation, behavior, impact. In other words, when we're talking about the feedback model and everything, situation, describe the situation with specifics. We want to be as specific as possible. The behavior, this is what you observed, right? And the impact, this was the impact and of that particular behavior. Just like when I used to, people ask us, hey, Don, in my other course, hey, do you teach how to write, bullets for EPRs and OPRs? And I say no. And the reason why is because I know that no matter where you're at in the world, and I've written hundreds of performance reports, but I'm smart enough to know that, base A may have different requirements from base B to base C to base D and so on and so forth. It all has the same thing, what they did, what was the result of it, what was the impact, but other than that, what actually goes into the particular performance, report bullet can really come down to local requirements, that the local installation or local group or local squadron or local commander, whatever it is, prefers and how they're actually formatted and everything. That's why if you ever come to my MPMC course, we talk about bullet writing, but I don't actually teach bullet writing because I'd hate for someone to say, even in this class, this is how Don showed us how to do it. Well, that's good, but we don't do it that way here. And then you feel like, well, Don taught us that way. So, that's what we say, local subject matter experts, right? But let's look at this right here. Let's look at this feedback. Let's talk about this scenario right here, this practice scenario. So let's look at Megan for a moment, right? So you asked Megan to prepare a spreadsheet for potential budget needs for an upcoming meeting, right? She provided you with a comprehensive list, including justifications, estimated costs, and potential sources for each item, okay? So you want a spreadsheet. That's all you ask her for, right? Because you're getting ready to do a budget meeting. She turned around and gave you not only a spreadsheet, but it included, those other things right there. Now, her efforts actually helped in getting the funding approved for all the necessary items. So using that item, that little model, how could we do that? Well, we could basically say, thank you, providing me the spreadsheet. Right? That's the situation. That's all I wanted. I just wanted the spreadsheet, and thank you for providing it to me. But that was the situation. Now, the behavior, though, remember, this is what I observed. Now, the spreadsheet that you gave me actually included a lot more than what I even asked for. It gave me all those things. You gave me justifications and costs and potential sources and so on. And Megan, because I had so much information went into this meeting, as a result, all the additional funding that I wanted was approved. Not only that, Megan, I could also caveat and say, now I know that since we're getting near the end of the fiscal year, that when they come and they say looking for fallout money, I've got my stuff, everything lined up already. I can just hit that send button and we're good to go and all that kind of bit. So we may even get more than what we actually wanted, thanks to the efforts of Megan, when all you asked for was a spreadsheet of budget needs to get ready for this meeting that you're going to, right? She went above and beyond, basically. And it's nice that you could let her know that. All right, so when it comes to developing, right? You see the little graphic we got here on the slide. We got the fish. You got 3 fish on the right-hand side. You got the 1 fish in the middle who jumped out of that hole and went and ready to go into the 3rd bowl in that. So the idea is you're going to have different individuals out there. Remember, our team is comprised of a whole bunch of different individuals. Some individuals will be very motivated that want to gather all the information they can get because they're interested in new positions down the line, maybe getting promoted, going from 11 to a 12 down the line, whatever it is. Then again, you can have some people that are like in the first bowl there on the left-hand side to say, I really like my job. Now I'm going to keep as current as I need to be on my job. New requirements, new equipment, whatever it is. I'm not going to be retired on active duty, that's what we call it in the Air Force, on active duty anyway. But I'm not going to be retired here at work. I'm going to actually perform and do my best. But I'm not interested, in other positions or promotions, whatever. I'm really happy with what I do. And there's really nothing wrong with that, right? So let me ask you this, when it comes to developing your people, right? Let's take, for example, you're getting this new requirement, and you got 2 people. You have Don and Melissa, let's say, right? Now Don, he's really happy in what he does, and he can train people and everything, and he's a good communicator and all that kind of bit, but he has no desire to move to anywhere else, and whatever the case is, right? So that's Don. Now Melissa's really out for herself, and she is interested in new positions and getting promoted, and whatever the case might be. So you have a TDY coming up, and so you say, I need to send someone on this TDY, and when this person comes back from this TDY, I'm going to need that person to train all the other people in my work center on this new requirement. Now I may get another quota later where I can send another individual down the line, but for right now I can only send one individual. So type in the chat for me, who would you rather send? It's an individual choice. Would you rather send Don, who is not looking to get promoted, not using it for a stepping stone or other, but a good communicator? Or are you going to use it for Melissa, who would really value this training because it can be used maybe further down the line for her career? So which one would you probably send, in your opinion? Right? In your opinion. James wants to send Melissa. Okay. Vinny wants to send Melissa. Melissa. I got Melissa's the go-getter. Okay, good. All right. And nothing wrong with that. But now, remember, as I mentioned earlier, not a really good communicator, though. So she's going to maybe come back to your work center, and you're going to say, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you train those people over there? And it's like, I can't formulate that stuff, right? So the idea is how you want to work your work center is really up to you. Some people will say, I'm going to send her because, like you said, she's a go-getter. It's really going to help her down the line, stuff like that. But some of you may say, well, I'm going to actually send him because, he's not looking for it individually, but he's one of my best trainers that I've got. When he comes back, he's actually going to train a lot of the other individuals there in the work center because he communicates really well with those people. So just some things to think about. If you get down to one of those like very unique situations and you have to pick between the 2 who you're going to send on that TDY. quite naturally, if you send Dawn, she may get a little bit upset and say, hey, I needed that for my promotion, maybe down the line, and whatever the case is. And you may say, yeah, but I may get another quota later. I really need these people to get qualified on this piece of equipment now. Right? So there was no right or wrong answer to that. How you develop your people, in other words. And remember, civilian developmental education as well. All right. Let me ask. Let's do this right here. I'm going to go forward. We're going to get into the area talking about IDPs for a little bit. All right. So let's talk about IDPs. Now, IDP is the acronym for Individual Development Plans. Remember, we're still talking in the development stage right here. Now, follow along with me on this screen. Now, if you're following along with me on the slides, okay, if you have your own slides, we are going to be talking the first 6 bullets to start. Those are the normal words, not the italicized words yet. We'll look at those in a little bit, right? But let's talk IDPs, right? So first bullet, there's a thing called EDP, Executive Development Plans. Now, these are already required for civilian employees that are at the executive level. Normally, this is GS 15 and above. Now, these are required by, you see right there, Title 5, CFR 412.401, and Air Force Instruction 36-401, right? Those have been required for the longest time. GS 15s and above, Executive Development Plans, EDPs. Right below that, second bullet. This is a relatively new change. This changed last year, 2018, right? IDPs are now mandatory Air Force-wide for civilian employees that are below the executive level as well, right? Below the executive level. All Air Force civilian employees. That was a change to AFI 36-401. It happened last year, okay? So the idea is we're looking at an IDP in just a moment as well. One of the slides you'll see, like on the last bullet you see right there, I mentioned the OPM website, Office of Personnel Management. Some great information. And what it states on the OPM website about IDPs is the government leaves it up to the entities, whether it's the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, the Department of Treasury, Department of Education, whatever it is, to determine if they're going to have IDPs or not, okay? Other entities have had them for years for their civilian employees. In 2018, the Air Force come online and said, and put it in 36-401, we are going to have these for all of our civilian employees, all right? All right. Third bullet. These forms, it's usually a 1 or 2 page document. That's all it is. It's very, very concise and nothing really drastically big or anything, right? But this document, this IDP, will include short and long-term goals of that individual, all right? And it's a working document, not just filled out and pushed aside somewhere. No, the supervisor, fourth bullet, the supervisor and the employee are working on this IDP together to try and make sure that this individual is being developed. In other words, we're talking about their professional development as an Air Force civilian. Or even, maybe they're going to leave the Air Force and become just another civilian somewhere within the GS system. But the idea is it's for their professional development, all right? Fifth bullet, if you got questions about anything in developing an IDP for your civilian employees, talk to your training manager, especially your civilian training office, right? They know all the ins and outs when it comes to IDPs. Sixth bullet, right? The OPM website has some great information on it, and also at www.fedcareerinfo.com is a great example. If you go to the OPM website and you just type in the term individual development plans, that page comes up and it gives you all kinds of examples of IDPs that you can use. One's from the Department of the Navy, one's from the Department of the Treasury and whatever. So now it's possible your civilian personnel office, whatever, maybe they've got a certain format you need to use. There's no Air Force-wide IDP format that actually is used. So again, you talk to your subject matter experts on this. But remember, IDPs are required for all civilian employees that are below the executive level now. That is a recent change, all right? Now, as I mentioned, we have an example for you. I'm going to do the slide. So if you're following along with me on the slides, go to the next slide, okay? This is just a little example of one. As you see right there, it says employee name, series, grade, position title, organization, element, supervisor's name. Section 1, what's a short-term goal for this employee? 1 to 2 years. What's a long-term goal for this civilian employee? 2 to 5 years. Different developmental objectives. And so you see, it's very basic, and we just fill out information. Like I said, this example is at fedcareerinfo.com. You don't have to use this example, but it's a perfectly good example and used by a lot of people around the Air Force for their civilian employees. All right, so that's an IDP. Remember, an IDP is for professional individual development. All right. Now, if you're following along with me on the slides, back up one slide to the slide that we were just on. Okay. Because we're going to now look at the items that were italicized. All right, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a Pol Pot over real quick and put it right in the middle of the screen. So this is, you can answer more than one. So my question to you is this. Are you an Air Force civilian or do you supervise Air Force civilians in the following GS series? So you got 6 GS series here. And the last one says NA does not apply. So the series are GS 008385, which is security or police officer. GS 1035, public affairs. GS 1101, acquisition managers. GS 1102, contracting. GS 1340, 41, weather. Or GS 2152, air traffic control. So I've got one person that's an 1101. That either is or supervises an 1101. Okay, everyone else is NA. All right. So real quick. Right now, these are the only 6 GS career fields in the Air Force. Okay, that have what's called a career field education and training plan, a CFETP. This is used differently from the IDP. If you look at that very last bullet on the slide that's italicized, remember the IDP was for professional development. The CFETP is for duty position and career field requirements. All right. So every career field, whether it's a civilian, whether it's an Air Force officer, or whether it's an Air Force enlisted, has what's called an Air Force career field manager. And every enlisted career field has a CFETP dictated by their career field manager. There are 19 officer career fields that require CFETPs as dictated by their career field manager. There are now 6 civilian career fields that require the use of a CFETP as well. So, and that's what I did for those, as I said in the file share over there, I said I had all these CFETPs. So that one individual, and anyone who else may be watching this as a recording, if you see your CFETP over there, you may want to download it. And you can also find it on the Air Force e-publishing website, right? Because if you do supervise, or if you are in one of these 6 GS series career field, not only are you required to be using IDPs for individual development, they're required to be using the CFETP to document their day-to-day duty position, training, and qualifications on the job. Not for professional development, but for their career field requirements and duty position. Right? Again, the instructions for that one person who's an 1101, if you download that 1101 CFETP, or if you're not using it already, there'll be instructions in there. Maybe it only applies to up to GS12. Once they reach GS13, it's not required, right? All depends what the instructions say in the CFETP. If you end up supervising someone who's in one of these series, or if all of a sudden your GS series now requires it, maybe your career field manager decides, ooh, we're going to put these into play for these civilians too, right? Then the person to contact is your squadron training manager, not that civilian training personnel, not that civilian training office, right? They probably have no idea what a CFETP is, but your squadron training office does. There could be a civilian who works in there, but it's normally a senior airman, a staff, a tech, sometimes a master sergeant, but usually not. that individual because they are used to these things for their military personnel. So if you have to end up using CFETPs, one of these 6 career fields, then if you have questions, contact that training office, your squadron training office, and they will explain the ins and outs to you. Now, these, like I said, just as IDPs are mandatory for every civilian, right, that are below the executive level, CFETPs are only mandatory for those particular 6 career fields at the present time. All right? So anyway, that's why I put that up, because no reason to download all those CFETPs if they don't pertain to you. All right? So I think we had one 1101 here in the classroom. All right? All right, so developing our folks. All right, so those of y'all who are following along with me on the slides, you can go forward 2 slides now, okay, and get to what's called the performance management. This is the rating, of course. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we sit down. We talked about this earlier. It's time for our appraisal times. Those of y'all who are in DP MAP, you just got finished doing all this. Those of y'all who are in DSITs or ACT Demo, you're going to be doing it very short, like do it, by the end of September. So normally, like I said, when it gets close to doing these ratings, you'll start getting inputs or information from your subject matter experts, your civilian personnel offices, to tell you, how to do things. Here's some objectives. Here's some guidance, whatever the case is. And remember, if we as supervisors and raters, if we do good feedback, there should be no surprises when it comes to the actual ratings in that, okay? Hey, my last Pol Pot for you, because it deals with ratings, okay? Have you had the opportunity to formally rate any of your employees yet? Your civilian employees. Let's say your civilian employees, all right? Civilian employees. So that's what we're talking about here in this class. Have you had the opportunity to formally rate your civilian employees? So you got your options that I've not done this yet, or I'm preparing for formal ratings, or I've completed 1 cycle, or I've completed several cycles. So what you got? Quite naturally, I would submit that our majority in here is probably or close to I've done this. If you happen to supervise people that are in DP MAP, but maybe you're not supervising yet. So we've got. It looks like our majority is 14. I've not done this yet. In second place, we've completed 1 cycle. Okay, and then we've got a couple folks on each end that have said I'm preparing for it. And the other said, I have done this a lot, right? Okay, good. So if those 16 of you who said you haven't done this yet, remember, it's not easy, but there's a lot of guidance out there for you to help you in that particular process, all right? So don't be too nervous about it. It's okay, right? So when it comes to performance management, remember, you had your steps of planning and monitoring and rating and so on, developing and so on. So the idea is the cycle continues. It doesn't end. It keeps going round and round in a circle. And like I said, you have your subject matter experts there for you to help you in all those processes. I know we went through a lot of that real quick. Any questions on that? Any questions on that? No questions. Okay, let's finish up today by talking a little bit about workforce incentives. Just a little bit right here. Just a couple things I want to bring forward and point out to you real quick. All right, again, so on the top left-hand side of the slide, you've got monetary awards, and on the bottom right-hand side, you got non-monetary awards, and you can see some of those examples right there. All right. So when it comes to basically rewarding your people in that, there's a couple AFIs that'll really be there to help you out. I'll put them down in the chat pod for you. Now, the first one here, you're probably very aware of, right? And that is, put it there we go, which is AFI 36-1004, which is Managing the Civilian Recognition Program. As it says right there, it describes the standard recognition programs throughout the Air Force. This is what we're used to day in and day out. But what a lot of people, let me rephrase that, what some civilians tend to forget or not know about is this other AFI. So let me put this down in the chat pod for you as well. Right? This other AFI that will help you in your awards is AFI 36-2805. It's called Special Trophies and Awards. And a lot of people think that this is only for my military folks that I supervise, and that's not true, right? As you see right there, it describes the eligibility criteria and submission procedures for awards that are applicable to officers, enlisted, and civilian appropriated fund employees. All right? Appropriated fund employees. So don't forget about 2805 when it comes to your actual awards and that. Now, there's one other area that the Air Force has put together for you to help you in this process. And I also saw that on the MyPERS website, when you get to the recognition area, they've actually got a great little spreadsheet out there for, if you want to download it from there. I don't have it, okay? But I saw it out there the other day. So let me copy this. Let me copy and paste this in here. But this little website right here, when you go to the Air Force Personnel Center, AFPC, right? And you got the little link right there in the chat pod as well. afpc.af.mil/recognition. That's actually the recognition page. You just want to put in AFPC website, get there, click on recognition. But however you do it, once you get to the AFPC's recognition page, they have a great new product out there for everybody, officers, enlisted, and civilians. Up on the top right-hand side of their recognition page, right, you'll see a little box that says Air Force Awards Database. And as you see right there in the screens, it's for officers, enlisted, and civilian awards. And it's a great little database because you can use it to filter down your search. You can do a search based on time frame. Is it a quarterly award? Is it an annual award? If it's annual, is it June? Is it July to June? Is it October to September? Is it January to December? Is it an Air Force award? Is it like an Air Force Association award? An Air Force Sergeant Association award? So all other kinds out there. So is it career field awards? There's a great database that the Air Force put together for everybody. So just don't only think about 36-1004. You have those other AFIs to look at to help you as well when it comes to recognizing your civilian employees. 2805 and the Air Force's Air Force public recognition page. All right. Any questions on that? Any questions? All right. No questions. All right. So here's our summary for today. We spent a good time talking about the performance management. We went through the overview of it. Talked about the main three systems that we got out there, and there are others, but those are the main three. We went into a SMART goal setting. We actually did it as a group. We did some great group brainstorming and looking at a SMART goal dealing with recognition and feedback. Y'all gave some great examples in there. Talked a little bit about feedback and actually asked you, hey, what type of feedback does your supervisor provide you, right? And also we looked at the SBI model. Then we got into IDPs. Remember, IDPs are mandatory now for all civilian employees that are below the executive level. And then we also talked about CFETPs a little bit and that they pertain to 6 civilian career fields at the present time, right? And lastly, we got into workforce incentives. Talked about those 3 great references that you have there in the chat pod, 1004, 2805, and lastly, the AFPC recognition page for that Air Force Awards database. All right? Any questions? Feel free to type in your questions. My last slide. Hey, I got someone chatting me. Where could I get an EMR conflict resolution class in residence? Gene, I will check into that, and I'll see what I can find out, and I'll send you a note on that. Okay, Gene? I'll send you a note on that. Gene's question was, where can he get an EMR conflict resolution class in residence? I'll see what I can find out. That's a good question, and I'll send it out to the class, actually. All right? Cool. Okay, so here we go. Next steps and questions. We're in week 3. We're in week 3. We only got one more week after this. So everyone's doing fine. I'm looking at your grades right here. Like I said, I'm not tracking anything on your grades right now until we get towards the end. We'll talk more about your grades next week when we get into week 4. Right? Feedback, remember, appreciate the feedback as you're going through your modules, especially once we finish the webinars. We're now finished with webinar 3. Next week will be week 4, our very final webinar for the course. Same time, same bat time, same bat channel. Hey, you got questions? Feel free to type them in. You got no questions? I'm going to let you go. Hey, but before I let you go, remember, you can work ahead. Remember, like it shows there in red on the screen, this course ends on Monday, May 6th. So especially if you're going to be gone next week, TDY, on leave or whatever, work ahead. I would hate for you to not to finish your coursework on May 6th and not be able to graduate, okay? We'll talk more about that next week, but feel free, please work ahead, if you want to. All right, hey, let you go. I'm going to leave you with a little bit of U2 and 40. Until then, I'll talk to you later, all right?